Hertz ProVelo Super League Road to the World Tour. Matilda, Raynolds, we are 5 rounds down, 1 round to go. Let's take a look back at a big week at the Grafton Inverell.
Oh, Matt, it's come around so quickly. I cannot believe that season 2 is almost over. And what an incredible weekend, I think, to have, again, up there with the Melbourne to Warny, the second monument in Australia, the Grafton to Inverell. It's such a prestigious race, you know, over 65 years old. It's produced some incredible champions and of that rider who gets to etch their name into the brick and place it onto the main street of Inverell.
It's really cool. I love that brick that you get to put on the main street. Up at Noosa for the triathlon, they have the Walk of Fame. So you get your name, kind of like the stars in Hollywood. You get the Walk of Fame at the Noosa Triathlon. I love it. So let's kick it off by having a look at the women's race. It was a boring race, but a brilliant performance by Kirsty Watts.
Yeah, I think what I really liked about the performance from Kirsty Watts is she wasn't. Yes, they gave her a bit of room, but it was done in raw power, and she looked fantastic, her form throughout that entire effort. It was almost 100 kilometres solo. She is the under-23 New Zealand time trialist, but she's only 19, so still really long to be doing those distances with that type of effort on her own. So for her, I think it was a fantastic result. I think at times during this season, Matt, sometimes the individual races have been overlooked when riders or teams have tried to look at the overall, where if you get a really strong individual result, that can set you up for so many more opportunities. So for Kirsty Watts, Meridian Bikebug, they're looking to partner with Black Magic, which is a New Zealand team, and they're going to become a Conti team. And so that team is going to amalgamate and go to Europe and chase some points over there and races and experiences. So for Kirsty Watts, fantastic, probably cements her opportunity, I think, in that team. And it's a great, well-known race to have on your list. And then, Matt, in the main peloton, though, I think there was just not the best positive tactics, I would say, in the peloton. A lot of blocking, a lot of negative, riding from teams. And in the end, I just don't think anyone wins from that.
The peloton was led home by Kelly Bennett. She was third. They were at 5 minutes and 14 seconds back. Maria Laurie was second. Good to see another Kiwi come over, and she rides at the same club as Kirsty Watts. Back to her and her team, Meridian Bikebug. David Williams, the owner of that team, I wonder if he agrees. I think that's their best win that they've had in the last 2 years. And they're a team that's invested a lot into the ProVelo Super League. They've had some wins. They've had some near misses. I was happy for the team as much as I was for Kirsty.
Oh, 100%. And I think it's a great show in persistence and just keep putting the right things in place, and the results will come. I think for Dave Williams, he's not just put a lot into that team, but into the Hertz ProVelo Super League overall and into women's racing, but also to have the likes and talent and minds of the likes of Taryn Heather, Kate Perry, who are their DSs, who both had fantastic domestic careers as well. I think to have them in the car, it's not just the results they're getting. The women in that team, like Alyssa Pilates, Hannah Gianardi, it's really setting them up as well for being able to take the next stage in their careers.
You touched on the negative racing back in the peloton. That was led by the Red Cat team, and Amanda Paulson, she was under instructions from the team. They were thinking about the overall league lead, courtesy of Sophia Salmons, and she came in for some criticism by the riders after the race.
Yeah, and we had some video evidence of that. We had some fantastic GoPro footage that was being streamed on SBS on the front of Adette Lynch. And with Adette Lynch being one of the strongest riders, Sophie Edwards wasn't there at the race, so Adette Lynch was Sophia Salmons' biggest competitor for the day. And previously this event has come down to a reduced bunch sprint or a mass peloton sprint. So Adette Lynch was one of the favourites and threats to Team Red Cat, and unfortunately they took that a little bit too literally in blocking attacks, going to the front, slowing down. It can cause some really dangerous riding. So I'm sure they have hopefully reflected on that, and we won't see any more of that in the Hertz ProVelo Super League.
It certainly makes for a good conversation point for us, and it shows how much is at stake. So Tempers got a bit frayed, and watch this space for the next round, the final round at the Q Tour. Let's turn attention to Sunday. It was the circuit race, purpose-built circuit in Inverell, and Keely Bennett, she got the win in a race where she was always going to start as the favourite, but she didn't want to win necessarily. She was hoping to support Eddy Lynch to get the victory.
Yeah, firstly, who knew Inverell has a purpose criterium course? So absolutely kudos to the mayor, council, all the people that have fought for that and implemented it, because it was fantastically built. It was captivating the entire time, the way it really moved the peloton through those corners and over sort of a tricky course. It would be absolutely horrible on a very windy day, but they got perfect conditions for it. As we were sort of talking in the coverage, Matt, Eddy Lynch just couldn't really position herself, and the last few laps, a very difficult course to move up on, and there was a couple of times the deck got reshuffled and they could have played some different cards, but Keely Bennett, she was looking back for a teammate, realised it had to be her to take the reins, and Alyssa Pilates, she almost got there. She wasn't going to celebrate early like she did in SA Kick It, but Keely Bennett just had that last little squeeze over the top and was able to throw the bike over the line from Alyssa Pilates. But yeah, some great racing. Belinda Bailey, they were really reduced in the Nostromo team for this tour. She had some fantastic attacks, and there was a couple of Hail Marys that were thrown near the end of that race. So a really exciting criterium, and I think a really good winner in Keely Bennett.
Yeah, Bennett got the win. Pilates in second position. Lily Pollock was third. Eddy Lynch finished 10th. What that does to the overall SBS League leaderboard is Sophia Salmons is on top. She's on 383 points. Sophie Edwards from Butterfields is on 329. And then Eddy Lynch, also from Butterfields, she's on 304 points. So it's not done yet for Sophia Salmons, who has made the biggest logistical commitment to this league, making the trip back and forward from Perth every weekend.
Yeah, I'm sort of spoken about that may be really starting to blunt her top end. We haven't really seen her being able to, the attacks that she put down in Tasmania when she was really able to drop the peloton and ride them off her wheel. We haven't quite seen that, but there's a huge opportunity for her that we'll review shortly coming into the Q Tour this weekend, and a course that should really suit her. I think also for her, this is really good practice for being in Europe as well. Travel every weekend is what's happening in the pro peloton, but also bunch positioning, how you look after yourself, holding the wheel, staying out of trouble. She's also had to deal with, obviously, that crash in Tasmania. She crashed just before this tour as well. So I really think she will be absolutely yearning for a break after this weekend. And also, it is now a bit of a tricky time period, Matt, where both for Ollie Bledden and Sophia Salmons, they've been trying to keep form since Nationals, where they really peaked, and we might be starting to see a lot of that really start to tail off in their form and performance.
Yeah, there's only so long you can stay up. She's due a holiday, so get through the weekend, Sophia, and she would be a deserving winner of this league. Let's turn our attention to the men's race, the Grafton Inverell. It is one of the classics. It was super fast, 20 minutes quicker than we've ever seen before. Finlay Walsh got the win in a two-up sprint ahead of Linden Millar. They were playing a game of cat and mouse in the last kilometre. They had been away, and they were kind of caught. Jeremy Smith in third, Levi Hone in fourth. They almost got over the top of them. Super performance for Walsh and CCACHE BODYWRAP to get the victory.
Yeah, what a way for Finlay Walsh to enter the chat. Liam Walsh's brother, and up there at the Balmoral Cycling Club, they go 1-2 quite a lot. But Finlay's really known more as the climber of the two, obviously. Liam, an incredible sprinter. And I think for Finn, this is a really strong performance. It is more of a GC climbing style event for the men's side. They obviously do a lot, double the distance as the women, and almost triple the climbing as well. So it's a really, really arduous day out. But speaking to a couple of the riders and hearing how it was for them, they were just empty tanks, hands and knees, couldn't get up when they finished this race. They were sitting down in the gutter and just absolutely spent, many of them having normalised powers for the entire over 6 hours or so in the 300s. So this was a really, really difficult race. We saw a lot of attack attacks, and sort of the opposite. We'd heaped on a bit of pressure and criticism to Team Brennan and CACHE BODYWRAP for not being more electric and taking the race head on at the Melbourne to Warny, and they really did that at this event, and another real notch in the belt for CACHE BODYWRAP.
Yeah, and on Team Brennan, just briefly, Pat Eddy, another unlucky day with a mechanical. He came in at 10 minutes and 5 seconds behind. And again, he's missed out on two of his big targets, the Warny and the Grafton. Just briefly back to Finn. He did show us some signs of this in Tasmania. He was 5th on GC in Tasmania and 7th on the climb up to Powhatina. Really different to his brother, but amongst those that can climb that well, he's a pretty quick finisher. Linden Millar in 2nd. That just could very well be the happiest second place finish that we've seen this season.
Yeah, he really, it really kept in the family. I was calling him his brother at one point, which was a big compliment. But to have your father in that same race was incredible. And I think what a great addition as well from Team Roland. We saw the Mr. January, you could call him, Big Kane Richards. He came out and represented that team as a bit of a guest rider, and they really worked this 1-2 attacking style. Kane was up the road, and then obviously Linden went up as well. And I think, it was what we talk about in this type of arduous racing. It was just those small little climbs near the end, which feels like mountains after such a big climb that happens over Mount Gibraltar in 18 kilometres. Yeah, very difficult day for many of the riders, and that was just the last little straw that broke the camel's back. And it was fantastic to see Finlay and Linden get away with, Levi Hone trying to close it down, but it was Jeremy Smith from Butterfields who was able to fill the podium. So Team Brennan missing the step there, but I think still a really positive day, obviously, for the team. They keep the overall. Levi Hone showing his class again with being an under-23 rider, and again, out of the top 4, 3 of those riders were under 23. So the form in those younger riders just keeps coming through.
Yeah, and the depth showing again. Linden Millar for Team Roland, one of the smaller teams, and a special mention of Tom Waits, 6th. He was riding as an individual from Balmoral. It was then back out to Lake Inverell for the circuit race on the Sunday, and Pat Eddy put the frustration of the previous day behind him, and he really dominated. He showed that he was clearly the strongest out there, getting the win ahead of Dylan Proctor-Parker. Oscar Gallagher was in at 3rd position, but this was not one for the sprinters. It was an aggressive breakaway.
Yeah, we saw Pat Eddy able to vent his frustration. I think Kurt Ether from CACHE BODYWRAP would have loved also that opportunity. We saw the slightest moment where CACHE BODYWRAP weren't sure what to do in the riders. I think Kurt Ether was really disappointed to have missed that move. At one point, he was chasing it down with his teammate, but then I think the call came through the radio that not to chase it. This is Oscar's break. It's not up to us to chase. But because so many of the teams, except Butterfields practically, Matt, it felt like, had missed that break was never coming back. And I think for Pat Eddy, we heard from him at the finish speak about he had his 2 goals, which was the Melbourne to Warny. He got 4th. He was definitely the best rider on the day there, and that was a huge blow for him not to get that and the frustration. And then he refocused for the Grafton to Inverell and, had that mechanical. So twice he just could not get himself at the front of that race. So a nice little top off, I think, but he would be chasing some much bigger results, and much bigger results he will need if he wants to re-enter the World Tour peloton.
Yeah, and that's the last of Pat Eddy at the Hertz ProVelo Super League. He's not going to do the Q Tour this coming weekend. He's heading back to Europe for the next part of his campaign. To wrap up on the circuit race, CACHE BODYWRAP, they cleaned up the sprint for the minor placings. It was Graham Frisley ahead of Kurt Ether, showing that they are possibly a better sprint team than Team Brennan. And special mention to Mason McAdam. For the first time, we had a good excuse to talk about McCarthy Homes. They managed to get themselves off the front. So now in the overall league leaderboard, it's Ollie Bledden on top. He's on 356 points. His teammate Levi Hone is in 2nd place on 281, followed then by Finn Walsh, who's moved up to 3rd on 244. So that is a fantastic result for Finn Walsh to move up in a 3rd position. Meanwhile, his CACHE BODYWRAP team, they're over in the Tour of Taiwan, and Will Heffernan, who got the win on the last stage with the entertaining salute, is part of the team at the Tour of Taiwan, which overnight, another Aussie riding for Lotto Intermarché, Matt Fox got the victory. So the teams that we're seeing here at the ProVelo Super League, they're doing the racing in Asia, and they're against a World Tour team, Lotto Intermarché, Euskaltel Euskardia there, Kern Farmer from Spain. So they're getting some really high-quality racing.
Yeah, and just a massive shout out to the team to be able to manage both those teams, the logistics. There'd be a huge amount of volunteer hours, I imagine, behind it. No one's making a huge profit in trying to manage those teams over there. So, yeah, just a huge shout out to the people and personnel who are behind that team to make sure that they can really maximize both opportunities. And, of course, we know this is the road to the World Tour. We set up these riders for 3 months in the summer, and then, you know, it's onto them to take a different path, which needs to be overseas for the next few months. So the fact that they're already over there, they're making it happen is fantastic. And yeah, just I imagine it is very, very difficult to be able to do that and to be managing 2 teams on one weekend in 2 completely different countries is a fantastic result.
Yeah, hats off to Sam Lizelle, who's driving the ship there at CACHE BODYWRAP. So our man on the ground, Angus Calder, he's been at all of the races and he gives us our weekly ProVelo Super League pulse. Here's Angus.
Thanks, Keenan. Thanks, Tills. Yeah, massive weekend. The Squadron Energy Grafton to Inverell and the Kennards High Mount Mitchell to Inverell. 2 really interesting races. I really enjoyed watching both of them. And I think one thing I wanted to call out is how the racing in these 2 classics has played out, particularly in the men's for the Warny and then stepping that into Grafton here, but also the women's are starting to show some of the same kind of signs. We saw in the Melbourne Warrnambool, there was a bit of a standoff between the big teams in the men's race. You had Brennan, CCACHE, they sort of looked at each other. No one really got on the chase and managed the breakaway. And so the gap just pulled out, it ballooned, and then of course we know what happened after that. The break managed to stay away and took the win. There were a lot of strong riders in that break, they're not to be underestimated, but it was quite interesting to see that dynamic playing out in the main field with the stalemate. This time around, it seemed like neither of those teams wanted to make the same mistakes. They were marking every move. They were going on the charge themselves. Team Brennan in particular was so active, but it almost came back to bite Team Brennan a little bit, I think. They almost used too much energy. They came into the finale with fewer options than they wanted. I thought their tactic heading into this one was thin the field out, keep a lot of their riders in that finish area in the finale, so they had a higher percentage of that final group, and therefore their chances would increase because they've got some of the strongest riders in the field. But they came into that end with a little bit of bad luck. They lost Eddy with a puncture, but I think they just exhausted their resources too much. So it's quite interesting seeing them go from stalemate, let the break right away, into this one where they chased everything down, got on the charge and kind of overextended themselves a little bit. And then in the women's race, they had a similar dynamic to what happened in the men's race at the Warny. There was a bit of a stalemate. Kirsty Watts, New Zealand under-23 time trial champ, she went up the road and she's so strong. Like in this sort of situation, that's her bread and butter. There aren't too many people I would be worried about riding away for 100 Ks, but she's one of them. And the big teams, Team Redcat, Butterfield Zip Track Racing, they were still active, they were still attacking a little bit, but there was no concerted chase whatsoever. And the gap again, it just ballooned and they had a bit of a stalemate again behind. They just looked at each other. And Kirsty Watts, she's not stressed about that. She's just sitting there, pressing on. Gap kept going out. She got out to over 7 minutes at one point, I think with about 40 Ks to go, which is pretty much wrapped up at that point. You're not going to chase that down unless she completely explodes, which she didn't. So it was very interesting seeing that dynamic. And then going into the Q Tour, I really wonder now what's going to happen. Are the women going to, have a similar kind of thing? Redcat and Butterfield's going to go on the charge a little bit more. Are they going to learn from that experience? It was very interesting seeing that play out. It seemed like quite a similar scenario from my perspective, at least in those two, and a very interesting tactical battle between all of the teams there. But that sort of stalemate with the big teams looking at each other was a real defining point of each of those races. And at least for me, I love getting into the tactics and understanding why everyone does it. Very interesting for me. Anyway, that was the Grafton weekend. Back to you both.
Angus saw it pretty much the same way that we did. He was on the ground. We're at the studio in Burwood, and we've got 1 week to go. It's the Q Tour. It kicks off on Friday, Tills. There is the road race at Lakeside Raceway on the Friday. It's then into the Brisbane International Cycle Park on the Saturday for the Criterium. But the one that we're looking forward to the most, the one we'll be broadcasting on SBS, is the Queen Stage, the mountaintop finish on Sunday. And we saw a great race there last year.
Yeah, incredible race that we saw last year. But on the crits, Matt, I think this is real bragging rights. No matter what team you're from, the Queenslanders really want to take this because this is their local. This is their local crit course. So they don't want to get tailed up by some sort of foreigner that's coming from Victoria, New South Wales. So I'm expecting a lot of pride to be on the line in the two short criteriums, or particularly on the raceway, because that's where they race. Similar, to the track that we saw in SA Kick-It down there at Vic Park. This is their local, so expect to see some fireworks. But fantastic that we're going to be showing again the Queen stage, which was so important last year, and it is brutal, Matt. If I can cast everyone's listeners' minds back, essentially both the men and women do a number of laps, which is really rolling, dead roads, very, very challenging. And then they sort of kick out from those laps and they finish on the top of Mount Me. And, we saw the women, they were almost screaming from exhaustion, like they just could not move. They were unclipping, holding the barriers. And so just the riders completely rinsing themselves of everything possible. And I think everyone knows this is their last opportunity. This is their last shot. No one knows what next year will look like for the riders, where they'll be. So if they want to put themselves forward, the world is watching, and this is the place to do it, particularly if you are of that sort of GC rider.
And what I want to see Sophia Salmons make a statement. You've spoken about her fatigue.
She has to.
Yeah, you've spoken about her fatigue. Let's hope that she can freshen up this week. And I believe she is going to win this league if she turns up with the form that she has the last couple of weeks. But I want to see her make a statement on Sunday.
Yeah, and I think it's really important for her. She had a fantastic result, obviously, at Nationals, but professional teams, they want to keep seeing those results. They, once they look you up and they start seeing there's a number of 6th, 5th, 4th, 8ths, what was happening there. If you're getting those results here in Australia and you want to come to the big league in Australia, in overseas in Europe. So I think it's really important for her. I think I'm really excited, though, to see the tactics that Butterfields can bring to this, because they've got two riders below her in Sophie Edwards and Adette Lynch. Obviously, this course doesn't suit those sprinter trackies as much, but that doesn't mean that they can't put Team Red Cat under enormous pressure and potentially get up the road before they hit Mount Me. And then, of course, Alyssa Pilates is still trying to put her business card forward that she should be going to the next stage in the World Tour, and she's sitting in 4th position. So I think for anyone, even if you're out of the GC, winning this Queen stage on the last, this is the day that's sort of embedded in everyone's minds for the next 9 months. This is a really key for any rider that wants to take the next stage to the World Tour.
And then we've got the under-19s are back as well because of the shorter distances. They can't do Grafton or Warrnambool. So I can't wait to see what Niamh Passlaw can do. She can have a big impact on the Sunday in particular. For the men's side of things, it's going to be tough to beat Ollie Bledden. He's got a pretty big margin ahead of his own teammate Levi Hone. I think we saw in Tassie to Poatina, Levi was working for Ollie. Between those two, it's pretty tough to separate them when it comes to the climb. I'm hoping that Finn Walsh can show the same sort of form that he showed on the Queen stage in Tassie. And Ollie Sims from the Cobra 9 Lee Surveyors team, this course suits him.
Yeah, definitely. I think on Finlay Walsh, he's a local up there as well. So there's that pride and wanting to bring that home, I think, as well. Ollie Sims, he went out and took the KOM down there at Poatina after the Tour of Tassie. So he's been in fantastic form. I really want to see from this, Matt, what the under-23s can do. Ollie Bledden, he's not an under-23. He still absolutely deserves that shot at the World Tour, showing just how consistent he's been across a range of different courses, and he's a gold medalist on the track. So he definitely has the engine. But what can the likes of Julian Baudry do? I feel like some of those riders have gotten a little lost through this season so far. And so what can those riders who are really trying to go to the next stage and that are in that under 23 category try to put themselves forward? Because again, winning this Queen stage, that is a huge thing to say, look who I beat, look at the data I did, and I took home the Queen stage of the Hertz ProVelo Super League.
I agree with your statement on Julian. He's been a little bit lost in the result sheet. He's been close. He was certainly good in the mountaintop finish at Powatina. This is a stage that he can win, and he should be the number one priority for the VIS, which is presented by Calla O'Brien. So I'm keeping a very close eye on Julian Baudry. He's capable of winning this stage. And I'm also keeping a very close eye on the under-19, who lives just across the other side of Toowoomba Gap from where Julian lives in Bright. The best climber amongst the under-19s who's still here, because Connor Wright's not racing anymore at the Hertz ProVelo Super League, Alec Fransky. Can he stay within the peloton before they get to the climb? That's going to be his biggest challenge. How much does he still have in reserve? There's another chance for him to show what he's capable of. So, I've got a pretty close eye on him.
Yeah, honestly, it's Milan-San Remo this weekend. It's a little bit like running into the Poggio, like everyone coming together, positioning being key. And so, yeah, I know for you, Matt, you're going to be coming off one of the longest race calls of the year straight into this Q Tour. So, yeah, I'm really excited to see your insights and how both of those races are going to play out on SBS over the weekend.
There's so much bike coverage on SBS this weekend. We start the broadcast for Milan-San Remo, for the men's race at least, at 7:50 p.m. on Sunday night. And we're off air.
On it. That's so good.
We're off air at 3:15 in the morning on the Sunday morning. So it's a big one. And then back into the studio in Burwood at whatever time it is. I haven't looked at the run sheet yet. That we need to get there to the broadcast for the last round of the PSL. So it's a big weekend of cycling on SBS.
Oh, that's just a huge amount of hours, live and free and on demand. Obviously, those purists of us, Match, will definitely, I'm sure, watch you from kilometre zero till the very finish. As I say that, I'll be looking up just when it gets exciting. Probably the best last 10K of any race that happens over
last
the entire
40Ks.
Year.
It used to be the best last 15 kilometres to the bottom of the Poggio, but now with Tadej Pogačar trying to win the race, it goes further back to the lead into the suppressor. So it's a brilliant 50 final kilometres. There's the anticipation, the build-up for 240Ks before that. The finale is magnificent. What is going to bring as well, Tills, is the last round of the PSL.
Yeah, definitely. I'm already praying for you for an interesting breakaway. May you have a great breakaway and not a TV one. But yeah, the Q Tour, it's come around so quickly, but this is definitely the most important one. This is the one where they can really stamp their authority. And I think the lasting, because this is the last race before they've been going to teams, trying to get overseas opportunities. And so this is really the last one for them to grab with both hands. And this is what the Hertz ProVelo Super League does. The biggest piece is that it provides opportunity, but it's up to the riders to really take that on. So, yeah, I'm really excited to be able to call this one with you.
Great. Look forward to it. I'll see you on Sunday for the last round of the Hertz ProVelo Super League. Ciao, Tills.